Here are 7 league-winning players that you need to acquire right now in your dynasty leagues. We'll tell you who they are in this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This episode is presented by PrizePicks. Download the app, use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Madjuk. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Madjuk. On today's show, we're going to tell you about 7 players in your fantasy leagues that you need to acquire right now. They're going to help you win your leagues this season. Kate, let's talk about the quarterback position. We each have a player here. Who do you want to go out and acquire right now for the home stretch in our fantasy leagues?
If everybody watching on YouTube could just politely close your eyes and envision I do not have a terrible towel behind me, that would be great, because you're going to be, your world's going to be rocked for like the next 5 minutes. But I do think we need to talk about Russell Wilson. Now, I'm not saying go all out and get Russell Wilson like in your redraft leagues. He's probably available on waivers. I think he's worth the stash, by the way. But I want to talk about this end of season schedule. Now, there's been no secret. The Pittsburgh Steelers saved all of their divisional matchups to close out the year. But I want to remind you all the current state of those defenses within the division. The Baltimore Ravens, passing defense, struggling, absolutely struggling, giving up 301.8 passing yards per game so far this season. They can't stop anything, right?
Nope.
Giving up the third most fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. Then you look at the Cincinnati Bengals, 223 passing yards per game, giving up a little bit more on the ground to opposing quarterbacks. Can't stop that rushing touchdown production at the quarterback position. Guess what? Russell Wilson does have that one rushing touchdown so far in the season. And the Cleveland Browns suddenly looking like a beatable middle of the pack secondary. You've got the Washington Commanders this week, who've been an up and down matchup, but guess what? Their offense is consistently putting opposing offenses in a position where they need to throw the ball. I'm looking at the Steelers schedule: Washington, Baltimore, Cleveland, Cincy, Cleveland, Philly, Baltimore. There's points on the board here for the quarterback who came out and had a top 5 performance in his debut in the football field in week 7 here.
Yeah. I don't hate it. I do think Pittsburgh's going to be more open to throwing the ball. One thing we've seen with Arthur Smith, the Steelers' offensive coordinator, is when he has let's call it a replacement level quarterback. And I think Russell's better than that, but you get the point. The quarterback's very efficient, whether it's Ryan Tannehill, even Marcus Mariota for a period of time, and now Russell Wilson. Like, he can get them to put up some pretty big numbers and pretty efficient numbers. And you're right, like, these defenses aren't as scary as they were last year. I do wonder, you could play some AFC North football. I wonder if it's going to be a little bit more low scoring than what we've seen. But you look at those defenses, and they shouldn't scare you the way they have in previous seasons. So I don't hate it at all. My player, Kate, is Matthew Stafford, who has now thrown 6 touchdowns in the last 2 games now that he's got his receivers back. And Kate, you look at the rest of the season schedule for Matt Stafford, like, I'm just going to run through the teams: Miami, New England, Philadelphia, New Orleans, Buffalo, San Francisco, the Jets, who are not as scary on defense anymore as they used to be, the Cardinals and Seahawks. I think the Rams are going to be throwing the crap out of the football against some secondaries that aren't very good. If Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp can stay healthy, it wouldn't surprise me if Stafford averages 275 yards passing and 2 touchdowns per game the rest of the way. And that's probably a top 8 quarterback.
Yeah, I think both of these guys are really great acquisitions for a team that is in a win now position. Maybe you're just looking to bolster that QB2 position, because I would be really feeling quite good if I could lock either of these guys in as my QB2. Not so confident in just their general like ceiling versus floor ratio to go all in at the QB1 slot here if you're like in a single QB league, but I think they're the perfect targets in 2 QB super flex formats that are going to give you a significant edge in terms of, just how much you have to pay up for them right now because the age is scaring people, the uncertainty about the years to come. Russell Wilson's a free agent. Like all of these confounding factors, I think are very much suppressing the value of these players long term. But right now, I think they could help you win a championship.
All right, let's talk about a tight end real quick because we're kind of lumping the quarterback and tight end positions together. You and I have the same name here. It's somebody that we talked about on Tuesday's show. Who is it, Kate?
It's K. Dotton. I'm still skeptical about that long-term value, but when I'm looking at the potential for target share here in the month to come, um, it's got to be K. Dotton. And even with Mike Evans, when he does make his way back into the lineup, Baker Mayfield's playing at a very high level that can sustain receiving production for two different players. And I do think that this offense has been very concentrated in terms of its target share. Hard not to envision K. Dot in the top 3 tight end rest of the season.
And Tampa Bay's defense is awful. I mean, it's awful. I think they're going to have to throw the ball. And obviously, K. Dotton is going to be one of the players in this offense who consistently sees 8 to 10 targets every week. I did see a report that Mike Evans was starting to get back on the rehab field. Maybe we see him in the next couple weeks. Even if Mike Evans returns, Kate, I don't see K. Dotton's role changing all that drastically. With Chris Godwin out, he's just the most reliable middle of the target field option for Baker Mayfield. I feel really confident starting K. Dotton the rest of the way. And when you start looking at some of the names outside of, let's say, Brock Bowers, Travis Kelce, and maybe George Kittle, I have a hard time finding anybody else that I feel more confident about week in and week out.
Yeah, love that call. I think that, in terms of upside at the position, that's very hard to find. Love K. Dotton. And of course, if you are really ready to go all in, if you don't really have any other positions of need and you're ready to just secure your tight end of the future, hard not to endorse wide receiver 1 for the Las Vegas Raiders, Brock Bowers.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about some running backs that we think are going to lead you to the promised land this year. Let's talk about my guy, Chase Brown, next. This episode is brought to you by Pre-Alcohol by Zbiotics. Pre-Alcohol probiotic drink by Zbiotics is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make Zbiotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and you're going to feel your best tomorrow. Again, step 1, drink pre-alcohol. For best results, make pre-alcohol your first drink of the night. Step 2, drink responsibly. Make sure you hydrate, you pace yourself, and get a good night's sleep. Step 3, enjoy tomorrow. Wake up feeling refreshed and ready to take on the day. Go to zbiotics.com/LockedOnNFL to learn more and get 15% off your order when you use LockedOnNFL at checkout. Zbiotics is back with a 100% money-back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they're going to refund your money. No questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL at checkout for 15% off. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We are discussing some league winners that you need to be acquiring right now. And Kate, let's head over to the running back position. And I want to talk about my guy, Chase Brown, who plays tonight, actually. We now know that Zack Moss is going to be out for the remainder of the 2024 season with a neck injury. They did trade for Khalil Herbert, probably not going to play on Thursday night, which means this is Chase Brown's game. But if you can't acquire him before tonight, try to get him after this week. Okay, one of the reasons why I like Chase Brown so much is even before the Zack Moss injury, he was getting a lot of work. He had 6 straight games with double-digit carries. He's got at least 2 receptions in each of the last 7 games. We've seen him create big plays. We've seen him score touchdowns. He's got 6 total touchdowns on the year. He gives this offense an explosive, dynamic running back that they just haven't had since the early days of Giovanni Bernard.
Yeah, I think that's a great call out. You love the usage. I think you especially love to see them figuring out a way to put points on the board with or without T. Higgins in the matchup, because I still a little bit concerned about just that overall stability. I think we've seen, this offense struggle at times without T. Higgins in the lineup. But, I think in general, week 9 was it just a kind of a huge vote of confidence that, yes, they can put points on the board. They can figure this out. They can figure out how to get, Mike Gesicki involved in the game. They can, there's a lot of ways that they can work with the talent that they have in the offense. And I feel very encouraged by that.
What's the most you'd be willing to give up to get Chase Brown?
So here's my biggest point of hesitancy is that I really like Khalil Herbert. And I know I really like Zack Moss, but I think Khalil Herbert's a better running back in general than Zack Moss, like true on the field running back.
Yeah.
Is there a chance that Khalil Herbert is a pain in the side of Chase Brown, just like Zack Moss was? Because I know Chase Brown, he's been scoring fantasy points, but still hasn't reached that ceiling with Zack Moss in the lineup. I think Khalil Herbert is a relatively similar kind of running back, not necessarily the burner that Chase Brown can be, but like a really guy tough to bring down after contact, great contact balance, just can play
No.
with a lot of oomph and power. Like I worry about Khalil Herbert just a little bit in terms of limiting the ceiling. But maybe that fear of mine is also a fear that other people have, and that'll kind of suppress the price of Chase Brown. So I think you've got to call and ask.
I think Khalil Herbert's just there to give them another NFL quality running back in case Chase Brown gets banged up. And Chase Brown hasn't been the most durable player throughout his NFL career and throughout his college career. But no, I'm not worried at all. Like, I think this is the Bengals are in a situation where they have to basically win every game, or, maybe they can only suffer 1 or 2 losses the rest of the way. I don't think they're going to care about the workload they give Chase Brown because he knows that they know that he gives them the best chance to win. Kid, he had 32 touches last week. 32 touches. Now, I'm not projecting that every week, but I think we can safely assume 18 or so touches a game on one of the league's best offenses. We know that he's dynamic with the ball in his hands. We know that he's going to get targets in the passing game. I'm all in here.
I love that. I want to stay kind of on the East Coast here. I want to talk about New England Patriots newly paid running back Ramondre Stevenson, who has to this point been, just kind of a total workhorse. You look at his work so far this season, he has 15 plus touches in all but 2 games this year. He has scored at least 1 touchdown in 5 of 8 games. He's had 2 games of multiple scores here, and both of those have come in the last 2 weeks. So, I think what we're starting to see is this offense generally trending up under Drake May, right? Started out the year pretty slow. I think we're seeing a lot more ball movement in general from this offense with Drake May under center. Provides an additional threat on the ground with his legs. And I think what we're seeing just in general is that this is really, truly Ramondre Stevenson's backfield. Had some fumble issues, but I don't think there's enough competition in this backfield to really do much about those fumbling issues from a benching perspective. So
I'm not worried about Antonio Gibson or anything like that, right?
no, and let's look at the schedule, right? So through the remainder of the season, Bears, you don't know what you're going to get from the Bears any given week.
No.
I love their defense, but can definitely be one of those games that is a low scoring affair that they just kind of run the crap out of the football and hope for the best. Rams, okay. Dolphins, okay. Then you got the Colts, a bye, And through the fantasy playoffs, you get matchups against the Arizona Cardinals and Buffalo Bills, which I think could be just these league-winning smash spots. I just think for the overall cost when you're considering the running back position, I don't like making a significant investment. But if I can get, the clear-cut RB1 for a respective offense who's going to probably at the very minimum see 17 touches per game, and I can get him for RB3 value right now, I'm going to take that.
Yeah, the good thing is there's a lot of depth at the running back position this year. Like, honestly, there's 20 running backs that you feel really good about starting week in and week out. So I think players like Ramondre Stevenson and Chase Brown actually have suppressed value when it comes to trading for these guys. So you could actually probably go out and get both, right? If you want to just kind of throw numbers at your RB2 position, maybe that's been a weakness of yours, and you want to give up some not later round receivers, but middling receivers for these guys. I think you can cobble together a really solid backfield with Chase Brown, with Ramondre Stevenson. Of these two running backs, which one do you trust more throughout the remainder of the season?
I'm going to go with the Patriots, obviously, or with Ramondre Stevenson. I know like the Patriots, not as good of an offense, but just from a workload perspective, I trust what Ramondre Stevenson is going to get. I think with Chase Brown, maybe that is dependent on your view of Khalil Herbert, but I just think there are a few more variables that we have to worry about in that Bengals backfield. Another one being when T. Higgins is in the lineup. Like,
Yeah.
how much do they really want to focus on the run game? I don't know, because I think they want the ball to live and die in Joe Burrow's floppy wrist. And so I'll take the Patriots just for where they're at, the kind of offense they're building, and the fact that I don't think there's any form of competition there for targets in New England.
And I'm going to take Chase Brown just because it's a better offense. And I just think there's going to be more scoring opportunities. And even more than that, I just think they're going to run more plays, right? Because they're going to be
Yeah.
able to sustain drives, keep them on the field. So,
It might
again, I
just be
think
that Chase Brown is more of a ceiling play. Ramondre
maybe,
Stevenson, probably
sure.
a safer play on a week-to-week basis. So that might be one of those situations where you look at your roster, say, do I need some form of stability? Do I have a lot of boom bust on my roster? Maybe Ramondre Stevenson is that guy for you. If you have a Ramondre Stevenson who's just kind of consistently posting 15-point weeks and you're just looking for that guy who might be a little bit more teetering on a week to week basis, but can pack a week winning punch, that might be Chase Brown. So I guess since we're going head to head, every dayers, you have to weigh
Yeah,
in
let us
and let
know.
us know. Who are you
All
rolling
right.
with?
Yeah, we know who's going to win here, right? There you go. Just bragging a little bit. All right, okay, let's talk about wide receivers because this one I will bet with you on this next one. We each have some league-winning receivers that you need to acquire ahead of Week 10. We'll tell you who they are next. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in award winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least two players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in most states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy so that your lineups stay in play, even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, Prize Picks keeps your lineup alive. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Go download the Prize Pick app today. Use promo code LOCKEDON to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets in the NFL all in one place. So if you're watching the games on Sunday and you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, check out all the odds. Maybe you think the Steelers are down by 7 late in the fourth quarter. They're going to put together a game-winning drive against the Commanders. You can go bet on it on FanDuel.com. It's the best week to sign up and play. We've got some outstanding games this weekend. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That is FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the new Locked On NFL show. 2 shows every single day, one in the morning with Tyler Rowland, one in the afternoon with Tony Wiggins. They do a fantastic job. Check them out wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. All right, Kate, let's talk about some league winners at wide receiver. Who do you got?
All right. So don't, again, just ignore the terrible towel. I think we need to talk about George Pickens. And this is very much an extension of all of the things that I had to say about Russell Wilson and why this could be a schedule that is very conducive to yardage, right? And that is especially going to be relevant for his number one target, clear cut, dry, no questions asked. Again, matchups against the Washington Commanders, Baltimore Ravens, Cleveland Browns, Cincinnati Bengals, Philadelphia Eagles. Like, we've got a really, really interesting slate of games here through the end of the season. The Baltimore Ravens lead the league in fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers. Cleveland Browns rank 4th in fantasy points per game to wide receivers. Like, there is a lot to like in general. The worst matchup for opposing wide receivers is the Cincinnati Bengals, who rank 21st in fantasy points per game. I think there is going to be a lot of room for some yardage here to be put on the board. And I mean, George Pickens with Russell Wilson has looked like an absolutely incredible connection over 2 games, 9 receptions, 185 yards, and a touchdown. And it could have been more, right? Like, we were a quarter inch of a foot tap away from another touchdown from George Pickens. He's averaging 20.6 yards per reception with Russell Wilson under center, 3.19 yards per route run. That ranks 4th among all wide receivers in that span. He's looking incredible. This offense is looking better. And I think you just kind of have to roll with the fact that he is the bona fide wide receiver 1 for an offense that is trending up.
I just worry how many feet he's going to get down when it comes to big plays in the game, Kate. No, I mean, you're right. Like, George Pickens could be, the narrative surrounding George Pickens could be so different right now. Like, 5 plays don't go the wrong way. Like, there was a touchdown against, I think it was the Colts or Denver now, where it was just an absolute bomb, but there was a holding call by Broderick Jones. Actually, there's just a lot of plays by Broderick Jones that's taken back some big time plays this year. If you're a Steeler fan, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't hate that at all. Like, you're betting on a premier talent on an offense that is much, much better than it was over the last couple of years. And I think you can still get a discount on George Pickens because probably so many fantasy managers have been scarred by Matt Canada and Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph and what this offense has looked like over the last couple of years. It's a different offense now, and it's going to be much more productive in the passing game. So I love that call. My guy, though, and I'm going to bet this guy outscores your guy for the remainder of the season, Kate. And that's Darnell Mooney, who in his last...
That is a bold take, Marcus. That is a bold take.
Well, here, let me make the case. In the last 8 games, Kate, Darnell Mooney is averaging 8.1 targets per game. This is not a player who is a complementary player to this offense. Like, he is a focal point of the passing game. And we've seen him be pretty reliable. He has, I'm looking at it now, 4 games this year of at least 86 receiving yards. He already has 5 touchdowns on the season. You're starting to see Kirk Cousins making more plays to him down the field. And with Cousins continuing to get healthier and healthier, I would expect him to have a bigger role. We should also mention this is Darnell Mooney's first year with the Falcons. Like, we should expect that he's going to get better as the season goes on. I think Darnell Mooney is somebody that you have to start every single week going forward. And again, you look at the schedule coming up this week. They play the Saints. They play the playoff time. They play the Raiders, Giants, and Commanders. Like, Kate, like those could be massive, massive games for Darnell Mooney. I'm all in.
I think you're right. The only problem I have in your argument is saying that you think he's going to outscore George Pickens rest of the season, because it ain't going to happen. But
Well, he
yeah,
might just get the touchdowns. Like, if this kind of trend continues of him just getting a touchdown every single week, it's going to be awfully hard for George Pickens to produce those kind of numbers.
I fair, but we know touchdowns, volatile, not a lock every single week. But I do think betting on, this offense in general is a smart move. I know it kind of had its slower start here in the beginning, but again, every week it feels like, Kirk Cousins just a little bit more comfortable and things look a little bit easier. And I think we're really going to see that, come to fruition here in the second half of the season. They are truly contending. They look like a good, real, true NFL offense. And Darnell Mooney has clearly been an integral part of that. I just, I think from a dynasty perspective, obviously I have a lot less trust in, his prospects long term, but that's also very much reflected in their overall dynasty value. Like, what would you be willing to send right now for Darnell Mooney if you're a contending roster?
Second round pick.
Second round. Okay. That feels rich, but I get it. Right now being drafted on average heading into this month, wide receiver 56. So for context, that's around players like Jalen McMillan, Jerry Jeudy, Romeo Dobbs, Andre Ishavas. Like,
where do we think he's at going into November? Like, once we get that updated batch of ADP,
I think he's probably a fair bit higher. I would say probably somewhere in the 40s. Like, that's kind of the Dontavian Wicks, Christian Kirk, Amari Cooper type of range. I think that
I'd rather have Mooney than all those guys come.
Yeah, I feel like that's reasonable. He's younger. He's healthy right now, can contribute right now.
Stable quarterback situation.
Yeah, I think that all of that's fair. And I think that's probably where we're going to see him land. And, for comparison purposes, like some players in that range, I feel like a second round pick feels relatively fair.
Just real quick, a guy that I thought of at the top of my head, like if I wanted a consistent receiving option, would you trade Tank Dell for Darnell Mooney?
No.
I think I might.
I'm of the belief though that like Tank Dell, much like Kirk Cousins, is going to get healthier as the season goes on, and I trust his value long term much more. I just believe in the talent more long term. Believe in the quarterback situation long term. I believe in everything. Tank Dell.
Which quarterback is better? Which quarterback has it, or which receiver has a better quarterback?
Tank.
You sure?
All right. You just wait until Nico Collins makes his way back into the lineup, and
Nico changes things a lot. I will say that.
Once we get some sort of offensive line installed, we just got to get an offensive line in Houston, and you'll be back on board.
All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen every single day. Go check out the channel on YouTube. Download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We will be back here tomorrow breaking down Thursday Night Football, Ravens Bengals. Really good game. So make sure you check that out. Follow Kate on Twitter at Kate Majuk. I'm at Marcus _Mosier, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.